Hey everybody, today I'm taking a look at Tigris and Euphrates, which is a board game designed for 2 to 4 players that takes around 90 minutes to play. So this is designed by prolific designer Reiner Knizia, who is kind of known for his smaller auction style games and some brute building style games. And for me, this is certainly the most involved and the most complex game of his that I've ever played. This one dates all the way back to 1997, so it's quite a few years old now, talking 25 years. And so there are a lot of different versions of this out there, different artwork, different covers, etc. But the game is fundamentally the same. So no matter what version you have, this review will still apply. So this game is quite strange. So the game is going to take place on the board that looks like this, which is divided up into all these different squares. You can see you've got this river going throughout the board, and you've got these several different starting temples on these designated spots. Also, there are these little bits of gold that are put on these temples, which can be quite important if you acquire them because they count as a wild point. Each player is going to get given a bunch of these tokens of their depicted symbols. So you are playing a symbol or a type of token and not the colour. So you're going to get a colour of each of the 4 different types. You've got the green ones, the blue ones, the black ones and the red ones. And you're also going to give 6 tiles at the start of the game, which are going to be behind your screen, but just for demonstration purposes, I'll be playing without the screens. You're going to get 2 of these kind of sabotage tokens, and you're going to get a conflict token. And there's also potential to put these different temples, these different constructs, and even this mega construct on the board as the game develops. There's going to be 4 different types of points that you're aiming for. So you've got your black ones, your blue ones, your green ones, and your red ones, which of course correspond to your player pieces. And you're going to have a massive bunch of tiles which come in this bag here. So the objective of this game is to collect these different victory point tokens in these different colours. However, the lowest one that you've collected throughout the game or at the end of the game is going to be your final score. So as you can see here, I've got 5 blue, I've got 6 red, I've got 3 green, and I've got 10 black. And because the 3 green is my lowest of the 4 colours, then my final score is going to be 3. So you want to be acquiring colours of all the different types throughout the game and make sure that none are being neglected. So I suppose we should talk about how we're going to acquire those victory points in the first place. So on each player's turn, they're going to have the option to take 2 actions, and there's 4 possible selections that those actions can consist of. So the first of which is to place one of your player tokens or one of your leaders. So let's just say the bow and arrow player here wanted to place this blue token. And let's say here like this. And when you place these, they're going to have to be next to a temple. So there has to be a red tile that it's touching. So that's one of your actions. The second action is to play a tile from behind your screen. So as I said, you're going to have 6 at any time. And let's just say I played this blue one as the bow and arrow player. Blue ones have to be played on rivers, which is kind of the only exception, and nothing else can be played on the river tiles. However, if you ever place a tile that is corresponding to a token in that city, so you've got a city is basically a connecting bunch of areas, then you're going to take a point on that specific colour. So again, I've placed 1 tile here, it's next to this blue token, or at least connected to that blue token. Then I'm going to take 1 blue point and add it to my score. And once your 2 actions are taken, you're always going to draw back up to 6 tiles, so you've always got a kind of fresh supply. And this applies even if the player piece is not your colour. So say this player added a red tile to this section here, then they are actually going to give it to the lion player. So let's say the bow and arrow player played this one here like this. Again, you're going to have a look who's got the red token in that area, then they are going to get that point. So the red player will get 1 red point in this example. That is kind of broken by the black piece though. So if there was a black piece here like this, and let's say a player played a green tile there, because there's no other green piece in that area, then the point actually goes to the black player. So the black's like the king piece, which trumps the other pieces in the event that that piece is not there. The third of the 4 actions is to play one of these catastrophe tiles, and when you do that you simply overlay one of the ones on the board, which basically makes that place redundant and can break up kingdoms and stuff like that, which will kind of, the significance will become more apparent as the game explanation continues. And the final action is going to be to replenish any number of tiles from your hand from ones in the bag. So say I was really unhappy with these black tiles, I can get rid of all of them, discard them from the game, and draw 4 back up to make a new hand of tiles. So if a player ever places a perfect square of 4 matching tiles like this, then they have the option to actually flip those tiles over like this, making a little square and a kind of a blueprint to place one of these temples. So these temples are really important because they are going to be a way to generate points automatically at the end of that player's turn. So let's just say, for example, this player took this temple and put it on that 4 square area. So what this means now is at the end of the black player's turn here, whoever's controlling that black area of the city is going to generate a black point at the end of their turn. And as you can see, each temple has 2 colours on them. So the bull player, the green player here, will also be generating a point at the end of their turn. Additionally, as an optional rule, if you ever play 3 tiles in a row like this, then you can place one of these castles on them, which means that green tokens, whoever's controlling the green city with that castle in, is going to be generating 2 points for each tile they place. So again, these can be really significant. However, these are not cemented in place as the temples are, so these can never be moved. These ones can always be moved if somebody exceeds the amount of tiles in another place on the board. So again, these are not fixed, however, the temples are fixed. Now, everything I've explained so far is pretty much the peaceful side of the game. However, Tigris and Euphrates is far from a peaceful game. There's a lot of confrontation and conflict in this game because everything is up for grabs and everything is contestable. So there's kind of 2 types of way that you can fight with other players in the game. The first of which is what's called a revolt, and the second of which is a war. So a conflict is always going to take place whenever there are 2 matching colours of these player pieces in the same kingdom. So as you can see here, the black player is kind of controlled by, the black piece is controlled by the jar player here. However, if there was, say, a lion player that wanted to jump into this city, now there are 2 pieces of the same colour in that same city. So the amount of different players in the same city doesn't matter, but the colours does matter. So whenever this happens, there's going to be a revolt. And revolts are going to be contested to see which of those pieces is going to remain in the city. And what's going to happen is you're going to calculate the strength of red that these tiles are touching. So you see here, this jar player is touching 1 red tile for a base strength of 1, and this lion player is also touching 1 red tile for a base strength of 1. However, if it was surrounded by other red tiles, then it could really bolster up your strength. And then what you're going to do is the attacking player has the option to add any of red tiles in their hand to bolster their strength in that fight. So as a base strength of 1, they might add these 2 red tiles to boost up their strength to 3. And then the jar player can do the exact same thing, which maybe, let's say, they put 1 red tile down. In fact, they wouldn't put a tile down at all because they know they're going to lose the fight. But whoever's got the strongest strength of red after that fight is contested is going to remain in the city and is going to kick the other player out. So in this case, the lion player came into the city and beat the jar player here. So the jar player would remove their piece from the board, and the lion player would actually take a red victory point to show that they've won that revolt. And any of the tiles used to bolster that fight are going to be discarded from the game for good. And of course, the reason you might want to win a revolt is because of these temples here. So now the black player is controlling that temple, so he's going to be generating points at the end of his turn. So again, these temples are very contestable and you really want to be controlling them. So let's talk about the other method of combat, which is wars. So let's say on the bow and arrow player's turn, they place a tile like so. And let's say on here like this. And as you can see, they've now connected 2 different empires. You've got this one here, and this one's just connected with this one. And immediately you're going to place one of these conflict tokens on top of it like this, just to say that's where these 2 kingdoms connected. And then you're going to have a look at all the different matching colours again. So in this example, we've only got the black pieces, which are contested because, again, you cannot have 2 colours of the same type in a kingdom, this is potentially now a massive unified kingdom. So what you're going to do is you are going to have a look at the strength of your piece here. So that strength is going to be determined by the amount of tiles of that type in your kingdom. So you can see the bow and arrow here has a strength of 3 because there are 3 black tiles in their kingdom, and the lion player only has a strength of 1. So immediately the lion player is at a disadvantage. And now the attacking player can choose to boost up their strength by adding more tokens to their supply, just like in a revolt. So let's just say the bow and arrow player played this black token here just to be sure that he's going to win the fight. The lion player is going to say, you know what, I cannot win that fight, I'm going to concede. Therefore, the bow and arrow player is going to win. Any tokens that they're going to use to boost their fight is going to be discarded from the game. And then, additionally, the other player is going to be kicked out of the game who's lost the fight, or out of the board anyway. And then every tile of that type that's lost the fight is going to be removed from the board, and the winning player is going to get a point for each type removed that way. So when you have cities that have a bunch of tiles of a certain colour in each of them, then there's potential to get a lot of points by starting and winning a war. And even if there is a bunch of different colours that connect in the same cities, just because there's one fight, there could be several fights. There could be red players, there could be green pieces, all in the same war. And the attacking player is going to choose the order in which they are resolved, which can have quite significant impact on the game, because the kingdom is going to be broken up and divided, determining on that order. So it's a very dynamic game, and things are constantly changing and shifting. These kingdoms are being divided up and broken into different parts all the time. And that is basically how the game is going to play out until either a certain amount of these gold tokens are taken from the board by connecting them together with green tiles, which isn't a massive part of the game. However, they can offer you these wild tokens which can go to your kind of lowest score to boost it up, or until the bag has run out of tiles. And then, of course, you're going to calculate your score, the lowest of the four, which is going to be your final score, and the player with the lowest score is going to be the winner. And if there's a tie, it will go to your next lowest, and then the next lowest, and so on, until there is a definitive winner. So let's talk about how I feel about Tigris and Euphrates. So first off, this is a game you have to be comfortable with getting in other people's faces. It's a constant game of battling other players, trying to boost up a force and try to take over their territories to try and control these temples. And so if you get in the right mindset, and even if you are a bit of more of a Care Bear player like I am, this is more than palatable. So let's start with some of the mechanisms here and the kind of flow of the game. So first off, I do love the way that this game is boiled down into just few very simple actions. Place tiles, move your leaders, replenish your bunch of tiles, or choose to use one of those catastrophe tokens. So very simple and digestible in terms of your options. However, of course, the fallout of those options is pretty massive. I love the way that everything stems back to your scoring system here. So you need to make sure that you are always collecting all of the colours, because if you don't, no matter how well you do in a certain colour, I could have 50 black tokens and only have 3 reds. 3 is going to be my score. So having a well-balanced buffet of points is so important and paramount to you winning here. And that is really where the tension comes in, because sometimes you'll find yourself just really struggling to get into these cities and struggling to leech off these temples, because of course other people might be really kind of reinforced by surrounding themselves with a certain colour, or if you can't win a revolt because they're surrounding themselves with red tiles, you're going to have to really try and boost up your personal supply of tiles with those particular colours to make sure that you can actually get in there and start challenging them. So I like the kind of tile management system here. Not only do you want to be putting them onto the board just to get that steady income of points and that steady trickle of points by placing them, but you want to make sure that you're getting into the regions where the temples have been established, because that is just steady income. It's that wealth that's just incoming every single turn with minimal effort. It does have a lot of tension. You can't just ignore what other people do and just let them run away with things, because ultimately they will be overtaking you if they are taking in all the different colours. So I do love that way that you can't neglect anything. You do have to get into every single thing and make sure that you have a nice balanced approach. Now, despite me saying that there is a relatively simple rule set in terms of the actions you're taking, I think there is some scope for confusion here, because the game does feel a little bit different to a lot of the other games out there, because particularly the way that the battles are resolved. So, wars are slightly different than revolts. The colours that you're using can be confusing, because even if you start a revolt with a certain colour, then you're always using red tiles. However, the wars, you're using the tiles of the colours you're fighting with. So there is a bit of confusion there, and explaining that and portraying that to other players for the first time can leave some scope for them misinterpreting the rules and being confused about what you're trying to tell them. However, I do think as the few turn goes on and you have a few examples about how these wars are resolved, it is pretty straightforward once you get your head around it. But that initial learning curve is a little bit higher than average. I also really love how dynamic this board state is. I love the way that empires are forged and quickly demolished and broken up into different regions. simply because of the fallout of those wars. And the order in which you resolve those wars in is also as important as anything, because sometimes you'll start a war and resolve a certain colour first, meaning that you won't have to fight the other wars because those are no longer in conflict. So you do have to be really careful about the way you resolve these things. Have you got enough to win the fight? Have you been keeping the tiles behind your screen to win the fight? And of course, all that is going to be massively consequential, because if you lose those wars, then you're going to give a lot of points, or potentially a lot of points, to your opponents if you have a lot of tiles in that region. Again, you cannot let people have all these temples. You cannot let people keep leeching off these castles. And you even have the potential to place this big mega construct down on a big, like a 3x3 type kind of cross section, and that can actually generate you a wild resource every single turn. So these are really good and keep you really flexible. And of course, whatever that mega construct is going to be a hotspot. The player interaction is everything in this game. You're constantly going to be in other people's faces, constantly starting scuffles. Again, having these big, massive wars which are going to have drastic results and break the kingdom into different pieces. You're going to be new people controlling the temples. Again, a constant jockeying for position and trying to get the power into your favour. So player interaction is everything in this game, and it is going to scale best at those higher player counts, being 3 or 4 players rather than the 2-player count, because you want more people fighting over the regions to make the game a bit more interesting. At the time investment of the game, it does take around 90 minutes to play, maybe a little bit longer for a first-time game. But I think in general, you are invested in other people's turns, because sometimes they're playing tokens down, and that's going to affect you because they're going to start a war with you. And you're always kind of keeping an eye on the state of the board and knowing when opportunities come up to maybe there's been a war that you've not been involved in, and it's going to divide a kingdom up and leave a temple ready for the grabbing. So you've got to move your piece and jump it to the other side of the board and start leeching those points, and being quick to protect yourself as well to stop other people from coming in and stealing it off you. So again, very dynamic board state, and that all depends on the other player. So player interaction is pivotal to this game. Aesthetically, I think the game looks really good. I mean, this is the most recent Fantasy Flight version. I think the older versions aren't quite as attractive. But I do like this kind of toned back, this classical feel. All these tiles look great, synonymous with the period. You've got these... all the temples and stuff look great. I like all the different player pieces. You've got like the bow and arrow, you've got the jars, you've got the lions, and you've got the bulls. These are like these kind of plasticky style pieces, but they all do look good on the board. It looks great when it's set up, and I'm really happy with the production. The theme of the game is pretty much non-existent. This is an abstract game, borderline abstract anyway. It's very deterministic. You can see everything that's here is completely open information apart from the tiles behind your screen, and of course scoring is kept secret as well. But yeah, this does have more of an abstract vibe to it, so therefore I think naturally the theme isn't going to be one of the things you're going to take away from the game, but that is certainly not a negative. I think the progression of the game is pretty good, because as the game develops, time is going to be ticking, more tiles is going to be placed on the board. Some people are discarding a bunch of tiles to make things speed up. All the while, you're keeping an eye on your score and thinking, oh my god, I've got loads of greens, I've got loads of blues, I've got loads of blacks, but I've got hardly any reds. I need to get the reds in quickly because the game's going to end soon, and I've only got really 3 of them. So I do like the way that you have that tension and that thread throughout the game where you always want to be boosting up your lowest score. And comparisons, this of course is going to always be compared with the re-implemented version of this game called Yellow and Yangtze. Yellow and Yangtze is almost, I say 90% the same game, however it uses hexes and some very slight tweaks in terms of what the different colours do. This is, of course, the original. I think I prefer this one to Yellow and Yangtze, to be honest. I think this one's a bit more clean in the way it works. I think the war system is a bit better. I won't go too much into that one, but I think all in all, this is a game that has its own real place on the market. I can't think of anything that really competes with this one in terms of what it does, apart from Yellow and Yangtze, which is pretty much the same game. So, yeah, real niche product here, which kind of ties into my final thought. So overall, I think this game is fantastic. I think it's a really wonderful design. I think it's a timeless design. So many great decisions here. Nice, clean mechanisms, as you'd expect with a designer like Reiner Knizia. However, I will say that this isn't going to be for everybody. This is for me. I think it's fantastic. I think it's fun. That being, considering that's a conflict-driven game is a massive praise for me, because I normally don't like in-your-face conflict games, and this one I think is great. I do think it's going to take a certain type of person to enjoy this one. Again, it's very in your face, it's very dry, it's very dusty, very deterministic. It's going to take a certain person to really get that fun from it. There's going to be people who could maybe appreciate the design, but maybe not find much enjoyment from playing it. It's not the kind of game you're going to be having laugh out loud moments and sitting on the edge of your seat. However, if you have a certain mindset, that might be the case, because again, the dynamic board state is so interesting. The fallout of those wars is really what really draws me into this game, and how things resolve, and you can really kind of map that out into your favour. And constantly spinning those plates to get the points is great. I think this is fantastic. So I would highly recommend checking out Tigris and Euphrates. Despite being nearly 25 years old, it still feels unique. It still feels fun. Definitely check this one out if this is your cup of tea and it appeals to you. You like these. You like these clash of minds, and you want to see who's going to come out on top. Then this is going to be one for you. So another classic design by Reiner Knizia that I'd recommend highly. Thank you so much for checking out this video. If you found it useful or at least somewhat entertaining, then please hit like and consider subscribing if you haven't done so already. Additionally, if you wish to support the show, because I am a one-man operation and I don't get any support from publishers, then please consider backing on Patreon at patreon.com/chairman of the board, where you can back for as little as £2 per month. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.